The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, NERC Compliance Evidence Simplification, Break Free from the Standards. My name is Leah Morse, and I'm a Marketing Communications Specialist here at Qualtrics. Your presenter today will be Terry Schurter, our Controls Strategist at Qualtrics. Terry's been working with controls since the beginning of his career. He is an award-winning controls engineer, winner of the International George Westinghouse Signature of Excellence Award, and a prolific writer. He's authored and co-authored a number of published business books. Most relevant to today's conversation are the two NERC compliance books you can see in the presentation, Protecting Critical Infrastructure and SIP Low Compliance Program Guide. So he literally wrote the book on NERC. I will be handing things over to Terry shortly, but first, let me tell you a little about Qualtrics. We are a compliance management software company, and we take a technology team approach. We offer an electronic quality management system to our customers, but we also pair it with our team commitment to those customers and their industries to ensure that we're really helping to simplify their technology burdens. We were founded in 1993, and we are ISO 9001 registered and have been that way since 1996. We're also proud Qualtrics users ourselves, and we actually use it in-house for our own compliance initiatives. Our office is located in downtown Blacksburg, Virginia, home of Virginia Tech, and in fact, many of our team members are Virginia Tech graduates. The majority of our team is located in the Blacksburg office, including our top-notch services and support team, but Terry and I are coming to you today from Galveston, Texas. So finally, I would like to thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to put them in the GoToWebinar questions area, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. And with that, I think we are ready to get started. So I'll hand things over to Terry.
Thank you, Leah. So I promised to be in the solution in this particular webinar, and that's exactly where I am. I've got the solution up. Again, my name is Terry Schurter, and I will say that even though I may have written a couple of books on NERC SIP, I am by no means the definitive expert. I don't know that anyone is brave enough to make that statement. But what I really wanted to talk about today is evidence simplification, because I've been in this market for quite a while now, and a lot of the approaches that we take to managing evidence are very frustrating and confusing to me. And I've felt for a long time that something needed to be shifted there, something needed to be changed, but I couldn't really understand what that change really was. Well, I've been working on it for a number of years at Qualtrics. I now believe we've actually found that shift, and so I want to actually show you exactly what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and go to the Documents tab in the Qualtrics solution. This is the NERC solution that we've got configured to date. And you know, we're going to see a nice hierarchy, a tree of folders, and if we looked at the normal way we would go about managing evidence, we would probably do something like this. And we also know that as we collect evidence, that we don't want these to actually be directory folders. They need to be pseudo folders, because I may have a document that actually satisfies 3, 4, or more requirements. So I want that document to show up, even though there's only one actual document. I still want it to show up in all these places. And a number of us have done that, and certainly that's a lot more effective than trying to do the actual directories on like a drive or whatever. But I also would just like to demonstrate that in this particular tree, I've only included the requirements that are specific to SIP low. And just to really kind of understand what that means, if we look down and open up the tree the rest of the way, there's a lot of requirements and sub-requirements and sub-sub-requirements, or whatever they're called, sections even, right? And so it's a pretty complicated tree, and it doesn't necessarily tell me what the heck is going on. In other words, if I don't know what SIP 003-6R2 section 4.2 is, just because I've memorized that information, I wouldn't necessarily know what evidence I would find in this folder. And even if we add in the descriptions from the NERC standards, if you really look at how NERC's broken out the standards, when you take little sub-bytes that are around a particular requirement or a section, a lot of times they don't even make sense. Where we might have, for example, an R2, an R level that says, demonstrate that all of the following were followed. And so without, as a message, that doesn't really tell us what it was. We have to know all the pieces underneath. Now, the other thing that is very frustrating is now suddenly a new standard shows up. And what do we have to do? We have to go into our tree, don't we? And we have to add in a whole new level of folders in our tree, and then we have to do something else that is can be very frustrating, is now we have to map evidence. Where does it go? I'm collecting this evidence. I went over here in this version. Now where does it go over in that version? And then we've actually, once we understand all that mapping, then we've actually got to reconcile it against this directory structure that's based on requirements and standards. And basically what I'm saying is that's not the way to do things. So let's look at the way I think we should be doing things. And so here we go. For SIPLO, we're looking at the directory structure that we are bringing to the marketplace. And so what we now have is we have a low impact BES asset list. There's a couple of reasons why we handle lists a little bit differently. But then we drop down through our controls. And just so you know, in case you weren't on the preceding webinar we did a little webinar about the overall approach to controls. So everything we're doing is all tied into this control strategy. Nothing is freestanding of its own, but still we can look at the evidence hierarchy and really understand what it's going to do for us by starting to drop down and breaking it open. Now I happen to know it doesn't go any deeper than this. So what we're now actually doing is we're talking about things we need to do. Oh, we have a low impact BES asset list. Well, for SIPLO, you're going to have some kind of a list of your BES assets that are low impact only. Granted, the assets themselves are not ever low impact. It's the BES cyber systems and cyber assets within that actually have that rating. But still, we don't have to have a list of BES cyber systems or cyber assets for SIPLO. So, but we do have to have that list that says we know which of our assets have these low impact systems within them. So we're going to need to have a list. And most people would look at that and say, oh, I know exactly what the low impact BES asset list is. Now, when we went through creating that list, if we use our control, we would populate each of these folders as part of the workflow. In this case, these are both areas where we would have external documents uploaded, and this is an actual automation control report to show we actually did this, who did it, what they did, and how they, and all the compliance checklist questions. But if I look at it, and my job is, as part of the BES Impact Ratings workflow, is to upload the BES Impact Ratings Assessment evidence. That's something I can understand. If it's upload what we need for SIP 2.5, R2, R2.1, R2.2, I have no idea. I don't know what that is as a human being unless I'm actually so well educated on the standards, both current and keep up with them as they come out. I don't really know, but this I know. This is very understandable, and I can immediately see, oh, I know what I need to do. If I'm the person being asked for routable communication and dial-up evidence, that's a very discrete thing. If I'm a manager or a compliance person who's coming back to look at my evidence, it's telling me what it is. I don't have to know the standards. Now, there's a problem though, right? Because suddenly I've made the standards go away. And that's an issue because we do know we have to actually report against the standards. Well, guess what? They're in the place where they always should have been. We just didn't see it before. And that's at the folder level where everything within the folder can inherit the metadata of standards this evidence will help satisfy. So if we look at folder properties, we can scroll down and boom, here's standards. What standards have we selected? Here are the standards that apply. Now I want to make the next magical point right here. A new version comes out of any part or all of the standards. And if it doesn't change the types of documentation that we're going to collect, meaning when we go back to that tree, if we're not really collecting any new evidence, we might have some additional checklists. We might know that the evidence needs to be a little more thorough than it used to be, but if we're not doing any of that, all we're doing is we're going to the folder and adding the new standards onto it, and we're done. And because the standards know what date they're effective, we can also parse our evidence out by version while maintaining all of our history. So the fundamental simplification that I'm proposing as the best way to really handle NERC evidence is to say, you know what, there's always going to be a certain number of tangible outputs that are what demonstrate our performance of our compliance. And those things have names that we can all understand. So if we start using that kind of a convention, we think about the artifacts that we're either going to collect or produce, and we align those to the things that we're doing that relate to the standards, and then we add on the actual standard and requirement metadata to each of these folders. We have a very manageable and maintainable system going forward that is very easy to update, very easy to change. And what happens if, let's say, we do need a new folder, a new type of evidence? We're being expected to do something we've never done before. We add a folder. It's that easy. We put the standards on it, and we're ready to go. Now, granted, in the overall model, if we're collecting something new, that is going to require, certainly within the Qualtrics controls approach, a modification to a workflow to make sure we actually prompt for and collect that new information. But again, that's a very, very minor change. It's simply saying the old was very, very, very close. The new needs to have a couple of tweaks, and then it's going to be right on. So it gives us a way to start managing things in a very meaningful way. It gives us the ability to start really adding more rich context into our activities. I mean, it's so much easier if I'm being prompted to upload the impact ratings assessment evidence to know what's expected of me than if it is if I'm using a bunch of jargons and standards and other things that basically are pointing to the thing that's real but aren't actually naming it. So the last thing I wanted to do before I open things up for questions is I wanted to demonstrate, and this is just really kind of begun, but we've got a lot of work that's not in here because we've been trying to go down through and make sure this model actually propagates successfully throughout all high, medium, and low. And so we've actually started building that integrated model, and I'm really excited about what I'm seeing, because when I start opening up here, as I start getting some things, we have lists here where I can collect the different information, and we're going ahead and we're using HML so that we can clearly know which of these folders actually requires evidence for what level of impact. So if I'm actually doing something with low and I even come across these, I know, other than this one, I don't have anything to do there. It's high, medium only. So we're kind of segregating our evidence a little bit here, and if we go down a little bit further, we can start looking into how things start to shape out, where with our BES cyber system categorization, we're going to need we're going to need our impact ratings assessment for high, medium, and low, but low specifically, if it's only low, we need that routable communication and dial-up evidence. So the model is actually not adding very many folders in to accomplish what we're really wanting to do by having a totally integrated SIP environment. And that's really, really exciting news. So as we work down through, obviously we'll be doing the same thing around operations and planning in 693. But this is the model that I wanted to present to everyone. I think it has many, many levels of simplification. I think it's going to fundamentally connect us to what we're trying to do, whether we need to see something, whether we have an activity we need to perform, whether we're preparing for an audit or an RSAW or any other compliance-like activity, you know, this kind of a framework is going to give us a lot of visibility into exactly what's going on. I mean, from this tree, I can find, if I'm a manager and I want to find out what we've done around something, it's very easy to find that. So at this point, I think I've covered the majority of what I wanted to talk about. I think we've got, I kind of went through that, I guess, a little quicker than perhaps I thought I would, so we have a little extra time for questions. So let's see if we've got some questions that people would like to share. There's got to be questions. I just know there are from this, because this is some pretty cool stuff. Okay, I do have one. So one question is, can you add standards that are no longer effective to the folders so that existing evidence can be brought over? Absolutely. That's one of the great advantages of the folders, the way they're set up. Because I'm applying my standards, I can put any amount of historical standards on a particular folder, and that's all I really have to do. So as long as I have documents that are in there within that date range as well, I basically I add in the standards, whether they're new ones or older ones, doesn't make a bit of difference. And if they are older and I have existing documentation over, then I just bring it over into those appropriate folders. So that was a really good question. Other questions? Okay, somebody's a sharp cookie. The question is, why are lists their own folder? So I mentioned that a couple of times, and one of the things that we're dealing with when we look at NERC compliance is there's a lot of things we're just simply collecting information that people can gather for us, but there's also a certain amount of data, the kind of data that we would typically have in an Excel spreadsheet or a database or from another system that actually outputs data. Those are going to be things like cyber assets lists and BES cyber system lists and personnel and things like that. And we have to manage that data as we do our compliance activities. So because lists are likely to be used by multiple controls, we put them in their own bucket. Other questions? Oh, okay, so we got one more. One of the question is, where do the folders under lists come from? So I'm glad someone caught that. So under lists here, we actually have 5 folders, and they've got some interesting names. One is BES assets, one is BCS, and then it's got this BES cyber systems after it, CA, VM, CA, BCS. The reason why those are set up is what we've actually done is we've taken the templates directly from the NERC, the SIP version 5 evidence request guide that NERC put out late last year, and that worksheet, it's a whole workbook, but we're taking the individual spreadsheets out because that's what the level 1 evidence expectation is from NERC. Those are the things you definitely should be able to report on. There's obviously deeper levels that need to be covered, but why would we not, right from the get-go, use that structure and make sure that we have the data that those sheets represent? They come directly from NERC, and so we've actually gone ahead in our base model, assuming that people will manage them with Excel in this case, which is a whole other discussion, which we can have at some point. There's some things going there around data management. We've plugged in the templates just out of the box right from that requirement spreadsheet. Other questions? I think I see at least one. How will the folders be organized as years pass? Yeah, they will. They'll be very full, but I don't think they'll be hard to sort because what we're already starting to do is setting up date filters. So at the end of the day, that's what we really care about. So as long as we can always make sure that as new content comes in, it goes to the top and it chronologically falls down. It's really how deep do I want to look? Well, 99% of the time, it's the top 1, 2, 5 things that I really want to look at. Now, if I'm wanting to go back and look at what happened 6 months ago or a year and 6 months ago, now I'm going to select the date range, and we will actually, as we go forward, we'll be providing that sorting capability right in this directory structure, so when you have that long list, you can sort and filter as you want. Because that's really all we need. We need sorting and we need filtering. That's all. So that's a great question, though. You're absolutely right. Eventually, there's going to be a lot of evidence in these folders. Any other questions? How often is the database updated? Several times per year or any time a standard changes? That's a really good question. So I think the question is, how often do we update the model, any parts of the model that we are actually producing when things change? And the reality is that is driven by a standard changes. So what we're doing and what we're going to be doing, and we're already doing it, we've already got models for both SIP 0037 and SIP 003 TCA. As we identify the changes that are coming down the road, we just kind of watch and we try to make sure we understand at what point are they very highly likely to go through and very close to the shape they are then, and then we'll start going ahead and architecting. Now, the cool thing is that all the things that a customer needs when it comes time to bring that new stuff in, I have some new standards, I have a couple updated controls. It's a fairly simple importing process. It is not a big administrative activity. We actually go through that process and validate that it's a reasonable customer experience. But there's going to be some activity. We'll always have a certain amount of maintenance activity we have to do. And one of the things we'll be looking at, our theme, by the way, is simplification. And so all these kinds of things, as we go down the road, will all be things we're going to come back and look at some point and say, how could we do that easier? How could we do that simpler? Other questions? I love it when I get questions. It means I didn't put anybody to sleep for a change. So it looks like that's it. I'm going to just pop up my PowerPoint one last time. And so again, my name is, I got one more question. And how difficult is this to set up folder properties for those that are challenged by technology? I got to answer that question. I have to. I love that stuff. Okay, so folder properties. Let's go change a folder property. Okay. Let's just say, let's change this folder property and let's go look at it. Now, the most important thing to know is there's very few things, actually I chose a bad one, but there's very, very few things you will need to change. Let me go back and get a better one that's set up with the standards. We'll go back and look at our buddy. But you're absolutely right. If we can't make all of this stuff super, super easy, then no one's going to be able to maintain it, and that's just going to be horrible. So let's say a folder, here's one. This is how one would be set up from us. So the thing is, there's really nothing to change in the main settings. Those should probably never change. There's really nothing that should change on anything down here. That should always be the same. So really on folders, all I'm really doing is I'm changing standards. That's really the only thing that makes sense. And I think even technology challenged people can do this. Which standards do I want to add? I'm going to add these three. And then the one last trick, apply. And now it's going to ask me, do you want to do them to all? Well, I want to apply to everything because I just updated it. And I'm going to save my changes. Oh, I should have chosen not replace. But anyway, hopefully that answers your question, because it's literally that simple. So, you know, when you set up a new folder, these are the settings. This is the way you want it to have it. You might include standards are required, but again, if there's any specific settings, they're typically set up one time, and you always do that going forward. And then all you're going to do really is just change the standards that are associated to it. Any other questions? Oh, there's another one. No other questions. How about that? So again, I'd just like to end by saying my name is Terry Schurter. Everyone that's on this call, you are free to reach out to me to have a conversation about any of this stuff that you want to. You know, I'm absolutely adamant that this is a conversation that we're all having. Finding things that make it easier, we're never going to make it magical. It's just not going to happen. But we can make it easier. We can make NERC compliance easier. And I think any of us that are engaging in that conversation, regardless of what we need to accomplish, whether we just need to talk, you just want to talk to me or whatever, please reach out. I am available. This is the whole idea around this, is to try and do the very best we can to make it as simple as we reasonably can. My quotes are, Leonardo da Vinci, everything, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and Albert Einstein, make everything as simple as possible, but no simpler. That's what I'm trying to drive for. So if you have an interest in just discussing the product, you have an interest in the product for your company or for your clients or customers, you want to have a dialogue, I'm available. Please just reach out, and look forward to seeing you all on a future webinar. Thank you very, very much for attending, and I hope I inspired a little bit of creative juices today. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.